a dark situation and so forth. But what has been done in recent years is they make the characters stiff. They're using language that sounds like it's Britain from the 1970s, you know, some formality to it, which is not fun anymore. People are not identifying with that either. The new way to convey story that is set in a different time, we see as successful, for example, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is conveying what could be a savage behavior, right? But the characters are eloquent and speak in a contemporary manner, so that we are given access to their minds, their sensibilities. They have slaves, but they comment on slavery. And that's important, and those are the principles that we are trying to apply to Antara. What were the fundamental values of the Arab mind back then? They were not entirely dissimilar as they are today. There's a lot of good and just and brilliant values that they had. Let's see if we can comment on how special Antara was, because he had a really remarkable mind, unusual for the ages.
Look.
Let's see if we can enlighten a contemporary Arab audience and global audience to show how enlightened this mind was.
Thank you. Mitchell, when you are making those transformations in the original narrative, did you intend to idealize or romanticize or westernize or adapt Antara's narrative to be accepted by a Western audience, or humanize him?
It's more to be accepted by an international type audience, but I was very, the thing that I was very careful about and I thought was extremely important is that he has to be Arab. And his characteristics in the story, how he relates to the tribe members, how he relates to Abla. I mean, there's bits and pieces in there where you know, if you're from here and you know the culture, you kind of smile when you read it because you go, right, I know that. So it's one of those things where as Jeff was saying, the storytelling is a little bit more contemporary in that it's not linear. It doesn't start at the beginning and end at the end. The storyline moves, which I think is more of a modern way.
Heroes in our own lives, not to wait for a hero to save us. So this is where we get to Collective Journey, which is the Antara story. Collective Journey is an omnidirectional story. It is dialogue-based. You can change the story by participating in it because the story is porous. There is a dialogue aspect to the story. We're living in this vast communal narrative, and those who understand how to leverage this new power will be extraordinarily influential. So in the Collective Journey, the protagonist, Antara, in this case, is one of many. Yes, he has exceptional skills, but so do the people around him. And it's his power of communication and theirs that generate the drama of the story. The narrative is driven by a cause for Antara, that's freedom and love. The narrative is weighted toward a non-gendered impulse. The character of Antara loved and respected women, and female power is half of Antara's power. It's really, really interesting. The challenge can be huge or pervasive. Antara helped to unite the tribes that comprise the Middle East, North Africa region. The narrative may be non-linear. Antara's world is a vast and sprawling world where many people contributed toward the evolution of the Mena people. Multiple perspectives and shifting points of view In order for Antara to succeed, he needed to understand the motivations of the tribal leaders, each of whom had their own agendas. And he respected these agendas instead of simply killing them all. There is strength in diversity. Antara is both African and Arab, and the people in the region were varied. He used that to his advantage and strengthened everybody as a result. Mentorship is distributed. Yes, there are older people who are wise and can teach us, but so can our peers. So can even our children. We learn from them and are able to move forward. The narrative is highly immersive from outside. That means that we have comic books, novels, video games, theme park attractions, all of which help to tell the story of Antara. It is conducive to pervasive communication. We are participating in Antara through social media, which means that we are networked. The whole narrative is built on knowledge abundance. To learn more, to have the knowledge at hand is to help ourselves. And so the hero wins. Antara succeeds because of the community, and the community wins because Antara remains a part of that community. So you have this pedagogy operating that is both ancient from the time of Antara, but relevant to today because story has changed to the point where we can look into each other's eyes even as we tell mass media stories. So no one is coming to save you. We are saving ourselves. We've been using this collective journey model in academia, but also in mass media, right, and in geopolitical crisis intervention. And there it is, Antara, a collective journey experience. The hero is distinguished by his ability to see different kinds of causality, both direct and systemic. The narrative is driven by love and freedom, not war and vengeance. Ancient narratives like this somehow have progressive ideals of race, gender, and different perspectives. It's a vast story world that will manifest as a feature film in multiple media. It is participative, and Michelle intends to recruit voices from the region to help tell the story of Antara. It's not just us, Americans. We're just setting it up so that they can tell their stories. And that's basically the deal, people. Let's talk amongst ourselves about Antara and how this works.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeff, for this brilliant and well-organized presentation. It's very panoramic.
Thank you.
And really, I enjoyed it. Okay, now we'll ask Michelle to give her perspective, if you wish, and then I will start to make a dialogue with you about Antara and Hawaii in particular and other questions.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah. You know, as I said earlier, I've lived in the Middle East for 12 years in Abu Dhabi, and the thing that really struck me is whenever I would go back to the U.S., you'd get the questions about, aren't you afraid? I mean, is it safe there? I mean, the whole list about you're in the Middle East, you're an American in the Middle East, you're a woman in the Middle East. Aren't you afraid? And you know, the answer is, if you live in Los Angeles, Abu Dhabi is like paradise. I mean, as far as, I love Los Angeles, but you know, Abu Dhabi is a whole lot safer, and we lived a block from the beach, and it was a wonderful lifestyle. And it gets to the point where you just sort of look at people and think, do you really believe that? And you know, there's no, on a broad sense, there's no appreciation for the culture and heritage of the Arabs in the U.S. In small pockets there are, but I don't think because it's familiar that people really understand it. That's the problem. And so, you know, I know a lot of Americans and a lot of expats come here and they have no local friends. And that was always the big thing that people go, I have quite a few Emirati friends and then other Arab nationalities, but the question was always, you have local friends? It's like, yes, we have Emirati friends. Do you know Emirati men? I said, yeah, my business partner, he's you know, a man and he's Emirati. And you guys can talk to each other and they say, I mean, questions like that. And you think, okay, somebody has to sit down and say, look, here's the narrative. You know, you may not understand the culture and the heritage, but this is the culture and the heritage. And it came from a historical standpoint from way back. And that's kind of what interested me in Antara. And when, again, I learned about the story from a friend of mine and how this character, he really was the father of chivalry. If you look at, you know, his poetry and how he felt about things and how he treated the others, I mean, people go on about, you know, the knights were the fathers of chivalry. It's like, no, this was long before that time. I mean, he was pretty much originally one of the fathers of chivalry, and his poetry and how he had respect for his elders and respect for his tribe and his love for Abla. All these things are very honorable and very interesting if you look at them from a historical standpoint and bring them forward to a lot of what is here now. And again, that to me, it's like, you know, a big joke was someone said, well, don't you feel really intimidated? I work a lot with, my background is finance and with media and finance. They said, don't you feel intimidated when you go to meetings? And I'm like, actually, the worst meeting I ever was in a meeting at Disney in Los Angeles. I said, I've never been to a meeting here where I wasn't very well respected, listened to, and treated very fairly. And I'm like, why is that misconception there? But I think, again, with having an Arabic hero as a superhero type, I mean, he's a real superhero, but basically in a superhero type role, it's going to give people an opportunity to see something completely different. And, you know, again, if you look at Black Panther, I'm sure Marvel knew it was going to do well, but most people said, well, you know, only African Americans are going to go to this movie. No one's going to actually go see this movie. And of course, it broke all sorts of barriers, and I think it's the #3 movie of all time right now, as far as box office. So you sit there and say, you're wrong. You know, people are interested in other cultures and other heritage. If the story is the right story, and you know, it captures the imagination, people are interested. And I think with Antara, you know, we've put a lot of time and effort into, you know, an Emirati gentleman stopped by our stall and said, oh, this is really interesting. I hope you guys do it right. You know, from the idea that, you know, you're not going to Americanize it type of thing. And that's exactly what we plan not to do, because I think that, again, it demeans the character, because he was an Arabic hero. He had a certain way about him with his culture and heritage, and that's what really drew me to the story.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now I'll go into dialogue with you about some details, and then we will give an opportunity to our respectable audience if they have any question. Okay, as you know, the image of the Arab in American media or American literature or culture is very negative image. I myself, I'm specialized in American literature, and I stayed in America for 10 years. All the novels I read about the Arabs, they have very negative images, whether about men or women. So thank you so much for this great work, because it is going to correct this distorted image about the Arabs. Okay, we'll go back to this later on. But now, let me ask you this question. Why Antara bin Shaddad in particular? What attracted you to this pre-Islamic epic?
Well, because it covers a lot of bases. I mean, it's an action story, it's an adventure story, and it's a love story. And you know, we've had it out to different places to look at different agencies and like Jeff's company to read the script and understand the story. And I like to say it's not, the story is completely different, but the story style would be like Lord of the Rings. I mean, if you think about Lord of the Rings, they fought for justice, you know, to save their people. There was the love story between the prince and the she was an elfin queen, right? Yeah. Yes. And they're kind of like band of brothers. They fought together. They were honorable. They had a certain way about them. And that's kind of the story of our Antara story, is that he pretty much follows. It's a different story, but he follows that character, and that it's a love story with Abla. He has his half-brothers, both Arab and African, that he goes on adventures with, and he's very, very loyal to the tribe.
Okay. Jeff said that you used some new narrative paradigms in order to make some modifications to the original, to the realistic Antara. On what basis did you use those paradigms, those narrative, both of you? Those. I mean, I published a lot on Western American fiction, and we have the Western hero,
Yes.
the Western American hero, and in every culture they have their own hero. So what are the bases of those paradigms that you used to shift
That's
the
a good
character
question.
of Antara?
Very good question. Well, one of the things that we became concerned with is that there are certain types of motion picture, big movies, because Antara would be a very expensive movie to make.
Yeah.
Why are stories about ancient civilizations, biblical epics, the so-called sword and sandal, those films are not doing well in recent years, both on television and film. And we're studying why. And our feeling is that, look, if you translate literally these narratives onto the screen, we're all going to run screaming because it's, you know, it's extremely violent. It's
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to have a very important presentation on the epic history of Antara ibn Shaddad, the Dark Knight, as Michelle said. Today we have two brilliant speakers. We'll start with Michelle Nicholson. She's the first speaker. She has been living in the UAE since 2004, but recently returned to Los Angeles to develop Antara the Black Knight, a story based on the legend of Antara ibn Shaddad. After an Emirati associate introduced her to the story, Nicholson spent 2 years researching before she wrote the first draft for her screenplay. Anyway, she told me that this is going to appear in the form of a comic series and also a movie. And this series is also being presented to various studios for adaptation into a film franchise. Nicholson's background is in media and finance. Okay, Michelle, the floor is yours. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, as it was noted, I've been in the UAE for 12 years, but I've been back in Los Angeles for a couple of years. And in 2007, an Emirati associate of mine introduced me to the story of Antara ibn Shaddad. And his question was, how come they never make movies about Arab heroes? We have all sorts of other heroes, but we don't have any Arab heroes in film. And I said, well, quite honestly, we don't know any Arab heroes. So for about 5 minutes after the meeting, he told me about the legend and the story of Antara ibn Shaddad, or Antara ibn Shaddad. And it struck me as a type of story that could be adapted for an international audience, not just an Arabic story. I mean, you have a very strong character who is a warrior and a poet, and you have the love story of Antara and Abla, which almost, the story of Romeo and Juliet, which obviously came long afterwards, kind of mirrors the story. I mean, obviously that characters don't meet their demise in Antara and Abla, but it's still that very strong love story. So to me, it was a type of project that, if it was developed the right way, could certainly be something for an international audience. We have a really great team back in Los Angeles. The other comic books producer got the comic writer on board. She now is writing for Star Wars and Black Panther, and one of her books is being adapted to take the place of Game of Thrones when it goes off this year. So it's a very good science fiction writer. Nnedi Okorafor, she's been a multiple award winner, and she's actually adapting the series, and it's coming out as a 5-edition comic book series. We have the first edition, which just came out about 3 days ago. here that we're giving out to people to kind of introduce what we're doing. And then there'll be a graphic novel, and it's my understanding that the comics and the graphic novel are at Comic Cave in Dubai and Kina Kanayo. We really haven't been told yet where in Abu Dhabi they'll be. But through this, I was introduced to Jeff Gomez actually at the Dubai Middle East Film and Comic Con. And he is probably the foremost expert on transmedia platforms. He's worked on such films as Avatar, Men in Black, Transformers, and the whole idea about what is a transmedia platform, it's how you take an IP, an intellectual property, and go across various different platforms with it. And because he's the expert at explaining it, that's as far as I'm going to explain it, because he does it a much better job. But we sent the Antara information to him, and oddly enough, I found out later he actually studied epic poetry. So he was familiar with the character of Antar bin Shaddad. And after looking at the materials, Jeff and his team are part of our team now, putting this together with a comic book series and now going into the film. Friday, we both left Monday to come to Abu Dhabi, and last Friday we actually got word back that the project had been picked up from a studio in Los Angeles to be developed into a movie. So the nice thing is the story is moving forward quite well, and we feel that with the recent success of Black Panther, that there really is an interest in ethnic heroes and ethnic characters, and it's about time. I think it's something that, this is a different culture and a different heritage that can be adapted for a film for everyone. So at this point in time, I'm going to introduce you to Jeff Gomez and let him talk about what the transmedia platform is and how this applies to what we're doing.
Hey people, I'm going to show a series of slides to introduce you to a kind of new way of thinking, which has to do with taking an intellectual property and developing it in such a way that it functions beautifully and elegantly across multiple media platforms. I'm Jeff Gomez, the CEO of Starlight Runner, and we're a production company that specializes in looking at story in a different way. The model that we use is collective journey narrative, and basically it's a new way of looking at story based on the fact that communication has become pervasive. Everyone has become a broadcaster, not just a few elite television networks and news organizations. Transmedia storytelling is the art of telling a story across multiple media platforms in concert. You see this with these new entertainment franchises like Star Wars or Harry Potter or Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've worked on some of the biggest over the past 10 or 20 years. The thing that we've come to realize is that story all by itself is no longer acceptable. Now story has to be inclusive of the input of the audience, the participation of the audience. The storyteller must now listen and integrate this feedback into the telling of the story. This is extremely vital, especially when we encountered something like Antara. Also creating experiences which are immersive, which are take the story off the screen and create things like theme parks and installations, virtual reality, things that can be interacted with are tremendously important, and my company has done this for the Walt Disney Company, and we're doing it now in China, creating these immersive, themed experiences. What do you think, guys? Any way to help? They're working on it. Sorry. So the point is that until now, we have had the standard story, the hero's journey. There we go. Okay. But how do so the hero's journey is simple. The hero is trained by the mentor to go out and conquer the enemy and bring back the treasure for the community. But these things have been happening in the world that are not normal. And are happening because of the input of many people, not just one individual hero. So this is now becoming antiquated. The idea of the simple hero, usually from Hollywood, it's a white man who is supposed to be everybody's hero around the world, is no longer the case. We are now starting to see that the application of conflict and violence and the authority of one race and one sense of what is right is no longer applying. We need a different story model, and it's a model that actually, if you look back far enough in history, for example, the indigenous people of Australia, they had this model which I thought was fascinating, and basically it's this notion of a nonlinear narrative. It's a notion of a narrative that is participatory, the way that tribal stories used to be, and so when you amplify that using social media across a country or across a world, you get a new kind of story. One, I think, that is appropriate to what we're working on in Antara. It's no longer might makes right. It is a community of the collective. So in the old school, the way that story used to be told, the model is driven on conflict, constant fighting. It's weighted toward a masculine impulse. The narrative used to be linear. You got one villain who had to be destroyed or killed, and then everybody's happy. There was this binary between good and evil that is no longer applying as much. Women are temptresses or goddesses, things like that. You destroyed your cell phone in the first act because that way no one can talk to you, and you then go on the adventure. Who needs it? Narrative is built on knowledge scarcity, right? The hero knows nothing and has to discover information along the way. Not anymore. The celebration of heroic power and glory. This is old school. And in the end, the hero loses because the hero has committed violent acts and has gone out into the world and is changed and different from everybody else. So the hero remains alone. And then, of course, the community loses because in the absence of the hero, they can elect someone who may not have their best interests at heart. Sorry there, Donald. What we want to say is that no one is special anymore. We're equal. There needs to be a sense of not the exception of the hero, but each one of us has the potential to behave heroically. We must learn from our stories to be
first and then working?
Check, check.
Okay, so
It's okay, just point to me and I'll introduce myself. No
we talk. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The first story by Lem in the Polish newspapers called Przekrój, I have read being, let's say, 8. Since then, I've read everything. I was an avid, absolutely avid fan of Lem. Then our, let's say, our ways went separate because Lem, let's say, like Saint Peter, who denied Christ, Lem denied science fiction. And he, about fantasy, we are not speaking about fantasy at all, because he despised fantasy. But from science fiction, he declared himself completely alienated, like Saint Peter. And it is interesting, because he denied science fiction like Saint Peter denied Christ. And funny, there will be no Saint Peter without Christ, and will be no Lem without science fiction. It's as easy as that. But still, he's a classic, so everybody must take the chapeau bas. So he's a classic.
Okay,
And he will ever be. He will ever remain the classic.
about the process of writing itself, about creation. Do you write consciously or subconsciously when you are writing the science fiction?
What, please?
When you write, it's a kind of inspiration. You are inspired when you are writing, like a poet writing an epic. You write. Writing is either conscious
Yes,
or
I
unconscious.
understand.
What?
Now I understand.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, inspiration is overrated. What counts is work. You work, then you destroy what's not good. What's left must be good. But inspiration is overrated. No, there is no muse flying over your homestead. No, that's a legend. That's a fable, fairy tale.
Where did you drive your characters or your plots from? From fiction or realism or both, or from the writings of other people?
So I describe this like this way. So for me, the story, a novel, something like this, is you can imagine a big circus tent. So this fabric that the tent is made out of, that's the story. That's a fable, that's story. The main pole that is holding this circus tent up is the hero, the protagonist. And the rest of the heroes of your book are these small pegs you put into the earth to keep this tent standing. It's like this. But what's most important, that the story is the queen. So every person, every protagonist, every fact, every word in your book must serve the plot, the story. If it does not serve the plot, it must be taken out.
Okay, you prefer to write traditional stories like starting with beginning, a middle, and an end?
No.
Or modern, postmodern?
Not at all.
Why?
It's no difference for me. It's no problem. I know the story because I'm never, I'm never asking where is this train going. Yes, no. If I board a train, so I'm absolutely sure where this train goes. So if I start a book, I know. It will begin like this. The story will develop as this. The finish, the final will be this and this, and the moral will be this and this. And then what I write first and what next and what last, it's of no importance to me.
You write for people to entertain what you write?
You know, like I'm filling the empty spaces.
Okay. You write for entertainment or for moral, to introduce moral lessons, or for what else?
Oh, for everything.
Like?
Wow. How do you expect me to answer? My books are deep, philosophical, you know, touching the most important places in the people's characters and souls.
Okay.
Good?
Very good. Okay. My last question, then we'll go back to the audience. What is your advice for young generation of sci-fi fiction writers?
Choose a better profession. Something that pays, something that guarantees your future. Stay away from writing.
Thank you. Yes, our respectable audience, any more questions? You have any questions for this great man? You'd like to add anything? You'd like to? The microphone, please. Just 1 minute. Yes, here, it's here, it's here.
I have found in the last books, which are available in English, it is one translator, one name. In few years, maybe 15 years ago, it was one lady, but now your name, it is connected with translator, one translator in English language. Is it true or not? You have different translator for different books. How is it?
Well, it happened that even in one language, I had more than one translator. That's true. It happened in English, for example. But it is not my business and not my right to decide. It is all the politics of the publishing house, which I must accept and into which I cannot interfere. They made what they want. Absolutely, that's their problem. So my let's say, most severe form of not accepting will be not signing the contract. But after signing a contract, I have nothing to say.
So, have you got estimation the number of copies of books which were sold? Today I found 2 million hard copies in the books. Maybe it was more.
I don't know. Frankly speaking, I don't know. But many books have been republished and republished and republished with different covers, with different forms. I lost count. I'm not controlling it anymore. I'm just counting money.
Yes.
When you are in the role of a reader, not a writer, what do you read? Any other genres that as sci-fi?
Oh, absolutely,
Sci-fi,
yes.
sorry.
So all the let's say not only science fiction and fantasy. Absolutely. Recently, I will say that the level goes to the crime stories, thrillers and crime stories, more than science fiction. Right now, I read science fiction and fantasy, let's say, as an obligation, because I have to know what happens in the business. But for fun, I read crime stories and novels. So I love Baldacci, for example.
Thank you.
Is there a character in your books you especially like? Do you have a favorite character in your books?
Well, no, because as I told you before, every character serves the plot. So they are not put into the story and into the plot because I like them or I like to write about them. They serve the plot only. But of course, they must serve the plot right. And that's the biggest problem.
Okay. Would like to say
Yes,
anything
please.
more? Yeah.
Hello, I'm a UAE national, and I came to see my friends, and they told me there's a fantasy book author here. So I was very excited to meet. I've never read your book, so after
Please
this,
do.
I would like to read. I basically thought that every author who writes fantasy book have an inner child in them. And
So,
they
Peter
have
Pan
this
complex.
Peter Pan, whatever, and they escape from the real world to the fantasy world, and they take the entire audience with them.
So,
So when you said all those things, it made me feel like you're just doing it. You don't love it. Am I right?
to some extent, yes. So let's say the Peter Pan complex and being an eternal child, that is something that can be regarded as the truth. That's right.
But that's sad, actually. I'm sorry.
But the other part of the question, you know, there is a big difference about when you write, it is not an obligation to love it. Of course, you must like it, because if I am not liking what I'm doing, so I'll be producing shoes or brewing beer, for example. So, of course, I like it. It was some kind of, the greatest happiness that I encountered and that reached me. It was that right now I'm a full-time writer. So I will no going to work at all anymore. No cretin being your director anymore. So no colleagues which are not colleagues, vipers and rattlesnakes. You don't have them right now. You are a writer. So I was very happy. So I have to love what I do. Maybe it is some kind of love. Maybe this child which is still in me, as you say, maybe it is not so eager to love everything, especially eager to show the love, because I don't like to show what I love and I do not, because I'm very careful. It is dangerous to tell people who you really are and what you really are. So I'm full of secrets.
Okay. One more question, last question, yes. Just 1 minute, take the microphone, please. Yeah.
السلام عليكم.
السلام.
دكتور صديق لو سمحت عاوز اساله بس هل الكتابه في الخيال ليها تاثير على زياده نسبه الجرائم لدى الاطفال؟
Okay, the question is that does science fiction or any fantasy writing lead to the increase in crime rate in terms of children, particularly with regard to children?
Absolutely not. There cannot be any connection. Why? Absolutely not.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. By the end of this session, and on behalf of you, let us greet and thank our brilliant, great author for this fantastic, fabulous, and friendly.
Is to make sure that Ed Sheeran will not be singing. That I will guarantee you. I will never allow him to sing in Netflix series. Of course, it's a joke. Please laugh. Please laugh. Please. Netflix can make anybody sing. Ed Sheeran, Madonna, Doda, everyone can sing. One of the people from the science fiction business that I know personally, and now I know all of them, Bruce Sterling, said he was filmed by Hollywood. And he said to me, if Hollywood is not casting in the main role a pink poodle, so you are okay. You won. You won. Otherwise, they will cast a pink poodle, not paddle, poodle, in the main role. Next question, please. Make my sugar level higher.
In libraries, we can find the books recommended by Sapkowski.
What? Once again, please.
In Polish libraries, we can find the books recommended by Sapkowski.
So, do you suspect me or expect me to feed these vipers? Never.
Okay. But what is from the young generation of the Polish authors?
The same.
The same.
Okay. Merry Christmas. No, Happy Easter, because like the newest Polish way of making your Happy Easter.
Okay, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure, absolutely. I'm ready.
Okay. What are your contributions or achievements to this genre, to science fiction, not only in Poland or to the European science fiction tradition?
Oh, well, that's a very difficult question, because how can I answer? I will, being very immodest, I would say that the contribution was huge, but it will be immodest, and I'm a modest guy, so I will answer I don't know.
Okay. Another question. In what sense the science fiction in Poland, or the Poland science fiction tradition, is distinguished from other science fiction schools in Europe or in North America?
Also, as I see, you are a specialist of difficult questions.
I'd like people to know.
Yes, it is a difference for sure, and it isn't at the same time. So you can say, what is that?
Okay.
What kind of answer is that?
Okay.
But it's like this.
Mm-hmm.
It is like this. I suppose the secret lies not in the way of writing and not in the persons of writers, of their temperament, of their style, and so on. The main difference is that in Poland and in many Slavic countries, people begin the adventure with their literature at a very young age. So, being older, reaching adult stage, they can very easily tell the difference between the good writing and the bad writing.
Okay.
So, Polish or a Slavic writer, or a writer from our, let's say, part of Europe, must be aware of the fact that he has his business with a group of people who are not tolerates no errors and no bad writing. It is like this.
Okay.
That's the only difference that I can tell.
What are, just one more question, what are the differences in science fiction in Poland during the communist period and now? Are there any changes?
Well, the main change was that nobody gave the publishing house the paper. So it was the main problem. To print a book, you need a paper, and the paper was regulated. So that was the biggest problem. So when they say, well, okay, we have to choose between this and this. So they always throw away the science fiction and fantasy because other things were more important.
What is your target audience? When you are writing, you have an audience in mind?
No, you know, I consider myself like a kind of everyman, like the Germans say, jedermann. So I am so typical in every aspect. So I'm quite sure and quite convinced of the fact that the joke that is funny for me must be funny for everybody. If something makes me sad, it must be sad for everyone. So it is like this. So no target. I am the target.
Okay. You didn't create fantasy fiction, but definitely you take it from somebody else, or you came under the impact of anybody else. Did you come under the impact of any author?
Wow. So.
Or did
yes,
you, or
sure,
did
for
you have
sure.
an impact on others?
For sure. Before I started writing, I considered myself as a specialist in the field of science fiction and fantasy. Everything that was of importance in this field was known by me perfectly well. But of course, I will never admit and confess to stealing from somebody or being an imitator. No, sorry, never, sorry.
Okay, what is the future of science fiction in Poland?
It's bright. I suppose it is bright. It was bright. It is a kind of literature that will never go down. Never. It will always be on the top. Right now, in the Booker list, there are 2 books from the science fiction field. And the same. And look at the list of bestsellers in New York Times, in every paper. Stephen King, you can consider him a science fiction writer, absolutely. Neil Gaiman, Joe Abercrombie,
Fine. Yeah.
and the old guard, of course, and the old guard.
Do you have
So
problems with
it's
publications?
bright. The future of science
Fine.
fiction and fantasy is bright. It is painted in the brightest colors you can imagine.
Okay.
Yellow, for example.
Do you have problems with publications in Poland? Publications? Now, with publishing, will you talk about publication?
No, right now I am I'm a lazy son of a bitch, doing nothing. So it is good. So it is one of the really brightest sides of being a writer. You can do nothing if you want.
How many books have you sold now for The Witcher?
You mean titles?
Yes.
Around 12. Yeah. Something like this. Let's say 12. Titles.
Okay.
Because about copies I don't know shit because they will never tell me anything.
What are the other writers, other sci-fi writers all over the world you recommend to people to read?
Well, as I said just before, so right now, in my opinion, the top shelf, it is still the old guard like Stephen King, and you can consider him also an old guard, Neil Gaiman. Very good is Joe Abercrombie. Very good is Peter Rothfuss. Very good is old guard Philip Pullman. Very good is Dave Duncan. That's like my short list, let's say. Because if I have to tell all of them, we don't have so much time.
For people from outside Poland, you read them in their original language or you read them in translation?
I read only in original language. I never read the translations because, as Italians say, traditore traduttore. It means the translator is a traitor.
Yeah. So, do you think a translation is bad? So why did you allow them to translate your work?
Nobody asked me.
No, really. What about
Nobody.
translation? Do you think?
Normally it looks like this. If the publishing house somewhere around the world is kind enough, they send me the CV of the translator. So I can see he translated this and this and this from Polish into, let's say, Chinese, Spanish, or German, or you name it. But I cannot imagine the situation that I look at the CV and say, well, he or she translated. Well, let me think about the name. But all I say, Sienkiewicz. So I refuse him. I don't want him because he translated Sienkiewicz. Never. I cannot imagine such a situation. So I read this CV. I said, okay, please. And then I see the book. Nobody will ask me anything. If the translator is kind enough, and if he really wants to make a job good done, sometimes they ask me the questions. Sometimes they ask me 2 questions, sometimes 200 every month.
But you write in Polish, right? And Polish is a very difficult language. So how do you expect people all over the world to know your work? I mean, in this, if you are against translation, this means that your work will remain on the local level only on Poland, and nobody else will be able to see this great man writing great science fiction.
What I expect from the translator is to translate it right. It's good to give the spirit of the book in the translation. But as I said, traduttore traditore, it is unavoidable that the translator will make mistakes. They are making a lot of mistakes. The best that I can remember now is about the Russian translator who asked me, he said, something unclear in your book. Somebody drank something from the canteen and said it is water and made like this. What does it mean? I said, well, it is a joke. In the canteen, it was not water, it was vodka. Looked at me and said, and who make after vodka? So it is a so-called cultural chasm or gap. Cultural gap. You know, that it happens like this.
Okay, we'll go back to our audience. Do you have more questions for this?
About
for this great
Polish,
man?
about the Polish being a very difficult language, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
You just turn your television in, and then you will see how people speak Polish. You know?
Any questions? Because
One question.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I? One question.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. There are 2 worldwide famous Polish sci-fi writers. Of course, the first one is Andrzej Sapkowski, and the second one, Stanisław Lem. What do you think about Stanisław Lem and his books?
No. I will revert, the numbers. So Stanisław Lem and me, because, well, he's dead. So, de mortuis aut nihil aut bene. And so, of course, Lem.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this important seminar. Tonight, we have a very important author who is going to talk with you about Polish fantasy fiction, Andrzej Sapkowski. He is one of Poland's most popular fantasy authors and a multiple winner of all prizes for works of literary fantasy. In 1997, he won the Politika Passport Prize, awarded by Politika, the leading magazine, to Polish artists with international success. Sapkowski is best known for his book series, The Witcher. He is the only Polish fantasy writer to have succeeded in crossing the boundaries of popular literature and catching the interests of not just newspaper reviewers, but also serious critics. His books have been translated into 19 languages. My friend, the floor is yours. Go on.
The floor is mine. So, first of all, thank you very much, United Emirates, for inviting me. Thank you for your hospitality. Please don't be shy to invite me once more. Okay. I will not refuse the invitation. So, first of all, let's make some corrections to the forward. I have received many awards. The most important one is the World Fantasy Award, which is granted to writers who are supposed to die quickly, because they choose the writers which are over 69, and they grant this award to them because they are afraid that they will not succeed. The next year can be too late. So I have this award. It's hanging on my wall. Very beautiful, very beautiful. No financial gratification at all. So it is, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but it is 30 years since my first short story called The Witcher, Wiedźmin, appeared in the Polish science fiction and fantasy magazine called Fantastica. It was the winter, as always in Poland, harsh winter, 1975 or 85. And I committed this short story called The Witcher. I sent it to Fantastica, to the literary competition. And I waited and waited and waited a whole year. No, nothing, no signal, nothing. I said, yes, I lost. So my career as a writer is kaput. I will never be a writer. One story I have sent for the competition and nothing, no award, no response, nothing, not even kiss my ass. Nothing. And a full year, 1986, The Witcher, the story appeared in the science fiction and fantasy magazine Fantastica. Wow, said, now I am a writer, I'm a writer. Everybody come, please, bring me flowers and vodka. I'm a writer. But you are out. Komu zadzwoni, ten wychodzi. Jak zadzwoni mnie, ja wychodzę. Well, where aha, yes, I know, sorry. So, you can believe me or not. You can consider me a liar or an arrogant son of a bitch, but believe me, I never planned any writing career. I wrote this story for the competition and was completely convinced, absolutely 100%, that I will never commit anything more. But the impact that this story, The Witcher, and the name The Witcher had on the Polish science fiction and fantasy community called the fans was so tremendous. So I was forced to write something more because they demanded it very, very strongly. My first contacts with the Polish fandom, with the guys who love science fiction and fantasy, read everything which is printed or appears in magazines. It was scarce, I will tell. I never understood what it's all about. Some kind of association, fandom, nothing. So it took me maybe 5 years to be convinced that maybe I should appear among them on their sabbaticals, which are called conventions, science fiction conventions. So I started to participate in these science fiction conventions. It took me more than 20 years to realize that the Polish fandom is like this old saying about the Roman Senate. They say, senatores boni viri, senatus autem mala bestia. So the Polish fandom is the same like that. It's absolutely the same. So guys in the fandom are okay, but as a whole, there are rattlesnakes. You know, a pit full of rattlesnakes. So no more, no. Fandom has given me nothing. I have given nothing to fandom. So we are on the equal basis. It's equal. So right now I'm 70 years old. So as I told you, I've received this World Fantasy Award. That's why, that's the reason. I'm 70. I have no plans, or I do not mean to just go into the state of laziness. Surely I will commit something more, because the chances that the Polish Ministry of Culture will pay my rent are scarce. I will calculate them at a level of 0. So I have to write, otherwise I will be evicted from my homestead, and that's not a good perspective. Absolutely. I do not see forward to it. So, I'm tired. So, are there any questions? Please, no. Oh, okay. No, let me rest a moment. I answer your question very readily and happily. No question. Good. So, yes.
You need some questions? Okay. Okay. Just
a little bit louder.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What I found today in the Amazon American store, American magazine, you are presented as one of the most successful writer in the world, fantastic writer in the world. I was surprised because it was 15 or 20 books available, not in the American version, but also UK, also German. So essentially the books are available, are presented, and there are many opinions. When I look at different writers from Poland, it's difficult to find somebody with one book in the Amazon, because it's English in different version. It's soft copy, hard. It is the version to be sent by internet. But your books are really available. So from going to the next book, what is your idea? You are thinking 1 year about what would be and write for 1-2 months, or you have all the time are thinking about the next chapter or next book of the story? Because really it is a long story, similar hero in your book. Have you planned, or you have idea immediately and write in short time?
So yes, I confess, guilty as charged. So my books, just recently I made some calculations together with my agent, and it appeared that my books are translated into 34 languages, more or less, because sometimes there are countries and languages. Let's say 34 countries. So roughly speaking, 30 or more and then 30 languages. It must have an impact on the market, and it has. So guilty as charged. So it's no wonder that these books are on Amazon or on the other platforms selling, because they are popular right now. That's guilty as charged. I've been translated into Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Portuguese in Brazil, Portuguese in Europe, you name it, a lot of them. So guilty as charged. But what can I do? To say no? So I'm not stupid. Maybe I'm looking, but I'm not. Believe me, my IQ is over 200.
Okay, another question.
So the rest. Sorry, right now I have some plans. Of course, I mean my literary work. I have some plans, but I will not disclose it, because it is the old truth that the ideas could be stolen. So one of my people, writers that I know personally, Tim Powers, American, asked, what will be your next book about? He answers all the same about steamboats. So, okay, let's steal it. So, if you ask me what my next book will be about, it will be about steamboats.
Yes,
Please, next question.
Okay.
Please. Give me some problems. Give me
Thank
some
you.
problems.
Thank you very much for giving
Make my
opportunity.
sugar level higher.
Sure. So we'll not ask about what will be a book, because we know about Steamboat, but when you expect the new book to be released?
6 months after I finish writing.
Great. Okay.
It's a precise calculation.
That's okay.
When you finish, exactly my question, when you finish writing.
That is not to be disclosed. That is one of the greatest secrets. And I count among the greatest secrets the ones that I don't know the answer myself.
If I can take opportunity to ask last question from my side. Are you in any how involved in the production of this new Netflix series based on your books, Witcher?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. I am a consultant. Let's say I'm a consultant. And I know for sure that my biggest task as a consultant is to...
The microphone's on.
You can say the blessings of God, or maybe I've got it from my late mother or my father. They have contributed a lot in terms of my picking up capacity or my memory.
It happened with Sonakshi, your daughter also.
Sonakshi, yes. Sonakshi.
She also dubbed her first film at one. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
It's 6. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I'd like to could you just give me 1 minute, please? We just wrapping up. Okay. We can have a conversation with Mr. Sinha and Bharti Pradhan. We continue this conversation in our stall, which is in hall number 11. The stall is F52. So please follow us over there and we can continue that conversation. We're running a bit late for this next session, and for which I apologize on behalf of Om Books International. I hope not to inconvenience you people too much. Please take over. And this book is for sale at stall number F52. Please, let's proceed to the stall. Come. Thank you very much.
I should contribute my might towards the society, towards the people, towards the nation. And that's why, under my social obligation, one day, right at the peak of my career, I jumped into the bandwagon. I turned towards politics, and that too in opposition. When I went to the opposition, many people thought I had gone crazy. Our friend Subhash Ghai, very famous filmmaker, he thought I had gone mad. But nonetheless, I continued, and of course the time came slowly but surely, that one day record was again created. The first time somebody from entire film industry became the cabinet minister, full-fledged cabinet minister of health and family welfare, and the cabinet minister of shipping, and then rest is the history. So this is what happened. I didn't want to go into films. I didn't want to continue, couldn't become a doctor, or couldn't continue medicine. That is why in the book also I have said, and I always tell people, that for your children, your ego should be set aside. Go by the aptitude of the child. If he wants to become, if he's capable of becoming a doctor, don't force him to become an engineer, and vice versa. Thank you.
Can I ask you something? You mentioned, Deepa, you mentioned how honest he's been. I want to ask you something. In all these years, I haven't. How difficult was it, and which was the most difficult part of the book for you to be so forthright about?
Of course, to talk about my wife, or to talk about my friends, including girlfriends. But you would note that, because we had to come out honesty, without going for any sensationalization. And if we'll maintain, we always decided that the dignity of the woman must be kept intact. We have talked about the woman, but we have not at all, we have discussed those things otherwise some people would like to go through. I've always taken even the friends who are my girlfriends or who came in my life as my anchor. I've learned a lot from them. They have contributed my life. I remain grateful to them, shall always remain grateful to them. That's why I never make fun of them. No woman, no fun, no this kind of stupidity. We have carried on, and for that, along with me, of course, but Bharti is also to be given equal credit.
Thank you.
Bharti, this is a person who, as I said, had his scars on his face, and he came from Bihar, and initially had to be struggling and battling also with a kind of an accent problem, and which he conquers. He goes on to conquer, I suppose, and then with all the people from the opposition, your book is one of the most outstanding books because he's from the BJP, from the opposition, as he said, and you've got a Congress MP and stalwart who agreed to give the foreword of the book. Alongside that, you actually went around talking to everybody with whom he had a run-in, but who spoke about him extremely affectionately. Now, a lot depends on him as to why that happened. A lot depended on how you earned their comfort level to be able to speak about him so honestly. How did you go about that?
For two reasons it was easy to do it. One, because like I told you, everybody was happy to, all the people I went to, they were all very, very happy to be a part of a book on Mr. Shatrughan Sinha. So that kind of opened doors for me. The second, I guess, is my own experience as a journalist. I mean, you want copy, that's it. So when you go to a person, you don't let go until you get the copy. And that, I guess that experience also helped. So it was a combination of both. And as far as his getting the somebody from the Congress to write a foreword on a BJP MP,
it's unprecedented.
It's unprecedented. But then the book itself is unprecedented if you go, because it really is, it broke, after Mr. Sinha's book, I personally know of film actors whose biographies, the different publishers had to actually ask them, look, go back and do this, because they were not willing to go ahead with the manuscript until it was redone to come to this level of honesty. So I mean, very big names, I can't take them right now. But I know personally of a very, very big actor whose book was written and the publishers asked him to include this, because it had to match up. So it's kind of set a benchmark for biographies and autobiographies of celebrities. And I think that's, once again, that it's a first time for him. He set the trend.
Yes, you set the trend. We're not going to, at this forum right now, talk about too much about the girlfriends because you've had a very, very rich life. Much as I would love to, go down that route.
Without the women, there's no Shatrughan Sinha.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just a given, and he has confessed that all of them contributed very richly, whatever that means, to his life. Now, as a biographer and the subject of the biographies, where were the it's too idealistic to think that this was such a smooth sailing relationship for 7 years. Did you people never want to fight it out over certain topics? And what were those topics?
There was one particular chapter
Bharti, I'd like to ask you this
there was
very,
one
very
chapter
openly.
I wanted to include.
Also, I want to know what was the family's reaction when they felt that you were onto something which was going to be Sansani case.
Well, his wife did tell me that she was apprehensive. She did say that when I was writing it. She didn't say it in front of him, but later on she told me when he wasn't there that I'm very, very apprehensive because I know Sonu, I know how he talks, and I know you. So, lethal combination. So she was apprehensive. And later on when the book was released, and I have to give full credit to Mr. Sinha for one more thing. He knew that I would be very, very uncomfortable if this copy had to be vetted by X, Y, Z or anybody else. So that was very clear right from the beginning. I wouldn't have done it otherwise, to be honest. that it would be only Mr. Sinha and nobody else who will read the copy before it goes into print. And it's marvelous that his family also did not interfere. They just let us be. So full marks to them as well. And he, like I told you, did not blue pencil anything. There was nothing that was edited out. So that was easy.
The final book
and we did not fight over anything. Isn't it? There was nothing that we fought over, which is really
you didn't stop speaking to each other.
There was one chapter I thought he should include, but he said, no, I don't want to. He had his own reasons, which was all right by me, because it really didn't make any difference to the book. I thought I should include it, but he didn't want to, which is all right.
Which chapter?
नहीं बोलूँगी नहीं.
नहीं बोलेंगे, okay, नहीं बोले.
बाद में बोलूँगी अब.
Okay.
Okay. One more question for you. In fact, I have several questions for you. How is it that with people of the opposition party, you've had such a fabulous relationship? It indicates an immense generosity of spirit and, you know, the willingness to sort of go beyond and try and understand what the political opponent is talking about. How do you manage that? Does the actor in you help in reaching out to a diverse mass?
Also, yes, indeed, at times. But I just said I was inspired by late and great Mr. Jayaprakash Narayan. And I learned from him, or people like him, that your opponents are not your enemies. Those who are in the opposition, they may be in the opposition, but they belong to the same society, same family. किसी का चाचा, किसी का मामा, किसी का भाई, आपका नहीं तो आपका. So they are not your enemies. You can differ with them on issues. It's a democracy. You may agree and may disagree, even with me. But that doesn't mean that I become somebody's enemy if I disagree or if he or she disagrees. So this is how I have maintained throughout. And for that matter, since I have never ever taken up anybody's name or don't go for anybody's name, I only go for the issues. That's why people love me, those who are in the opposition parties also. They're very fond of me. You can call me in Hindi, I can give you a very appropriate term that they consider me Sarva Dal Priye. Everybody thinks that I'm a friend. And to me, once a friend is always a friend, regardless of caste, creed, society, religion, or even parties.
You know, when you talk about his pan-party appeal, it's also very interesting that he comes from Bihar. But there's an entire chapter which is devoted to the South. You have people like Rajnikant, they're also in the book. Amrish, there are huge actors from the South who have all, Chiranjeevi, they have all talked about how he inspired them to become actors, which is, I mean, unprecedented. You don't have somebody from Bihar inspiring somebody from Tamil Nadu and from Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, etc. So, you know, it was really unprecedented and it was wonderful including that chapter. How do you have somebody from Bihar inspiring Rajnikant to become an actor? And it happened. Yes. Rajnikant has talked about how he saw his film Rampur Ka Lakshman 32 times and then he kind of took those mannerisms and started emulating him.
Yes. No, that is actually quite outstanding. And not only that, you know, medicine's loss has been probably one of the biggest cultural gains of India in terms of, you know, you becoming an actor and a politician later. You've had a very special relationship with some of the finest Bengali directors. One of them is responsible for getting you into FTII. The other one, Gautam Ghosh, has spoken so well about, you know, your equation with Bangla as a language and your fantastic memory. I have to share this with all of you. And I am not saying it, but some of the directors that he's worked with has said that he has such a disgusting memory that he looks at a script for once or a few seconds, and then he doesn't look at it. There's some speed read which is happening, and then it's committed to memory for good. So he doesn't have to sort of retire into any little corner and say, okay, now let me keep reading my lines and all that. Now, talk to us about your special relationship with these Bengali directors. and your fondness for Bengalis.
I've been very fortunate that most of the topmost Bengali directors, including Ritwik Ghatak, Mrinal Sen, or for that matter, the internationally acclaimed Gautam Ghosh, was a very dear friend of mine, and we did a film together which won the International Grand Prix Award, that is best film in the world, Antara Jatra. There I was speaking Bengali, but not the Bengali, but people you would speak. It was the colloquial Bengali. You had to unlearn what you knew and then relearn the colloquial language. And I remember 10 days of mine was taken for the dubbing. And great actors, I had an opportunity of working with the great actors like Robbie Ghosh, Boshantada, and there's also, they took 10 days for them also, dubbing in Bengal. So one day I was having lunch somewhere. I said, is the theater around? He said, yeah, it's 10 minutes. I said, is there somebody who can assist me, guide me? I took somebody to the theater, and in one go, right from 2 or 3 in the afternoon to about 8, 9, I finished the entire film. I didn't have to go through the script, and I knew the lines by heart. So this is...
Sir, he's known to say khamosh to everybody. He actually doesn't even need to say khamosh. When he walks in, it's good enough. Everybody else falls silent and khamosh. And it's a privilege, that's Shatrughan Sinha, the subject of this biography. And it's a privilege to welcome an old friend and a very, very distinguished biographer out of India. Her name is Bharti S. Pradhan, and probably one of the finest film journalists out of India. Please, Bharti, take your seat. And my name is Deepa Chaudhary. I'm the chief editor of Om Books International. I have the privilege of introducing my own self, and I happen to be the editor of the book. So a big round of applause for them, and let's get started straight away. Straight away. A very, very, very warm welcome to both of you, and a big, big, big shukran to the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair for having these distinguished guests over. Bharti, I think in recent times I have not met a biographer who stuck it out for about 7, 8 years researching the book. How did you manage to do it, and why? Why 7, 8 years of a life very well spent on Shatrughan Sinha?
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here at the Abu Dhabi Book Fair. Can you hear me? Okay. When you talk of a person like Shatrughan Sinha, who's an achiever, both in the film industry and in politics, and he's come from nowhere with no connections, no surname, no nothing, I think there's so much to say. And there were so many people who wanted to be a part of the book. We had politicians, we had film people, I mean, people as diverse as Nawaz Sharif from Pakistan to Amitabh Bachchan here and Subhash Ghai. We had a whole range of people who wanted to be a part of the book. And it was wonderful talking to everybody. Now, when you cover this kind of span, I mean, you're bound to take much more than 7 years, I would think. And this was not a 7-year enterprise. I think it was much more because I have known him for about 20 years before that. So I think it's been an ongoing process which finally came out when you edited the book, Deepa. Thank you.
I'm going to get to you, sir, very, very quickly. But before that, I have to say that this is one of the most honest biographies, not only to come out of India, but definitely to come out of the world. And what made it possible? What made it possible for it to be such an honest biography? You usually have family members, the subject himself who will come in and say that, no, you can't put this, you have to put that, you have to do it according to me. So you seem to have had a cakewalk with him.
Okay, I had a cakewalk because of the kind of person Mr. Sinha is. I think anybody who knows him will know just how open he is about and how sporting he is about his life and about his opinions. whether you agree with it or not. He's very, very honest with it and very forthright. He's that way as a person. And that's the reason I was keen to do the book. And when I spoke to him, we were both on the same page. We knew that this is going to be candid, it's going to be humorous, it's going to be inspiring, and we're not going to hold our punches. So we're not going to pull our punches. So we were very, very clear about it. Now, what I have to say is, as a journalist, you know, I know what it's like to be balanced and that it has to be readable, it has to be credible, but it's thanks to Mr. Sinha that he agreed to be readable and credible and balanced. You know, there were times when he said something about, say, Amitabh Bachchan or about Lal Krishna Advani or about his own family. So immediately I went back to those people. I went to Mr. Advani, I went to Amitabh Bachchan, I went to his family and got their counter to what he had to say. So the balance was maintained, and that was only because he was sporting about it. He could very well have put his foot down and said, no, let's not have this, or can you gloss over this, or can you edit this out? He didn't. My first manuscript was my final manuscript. There was just no blue penciling by him. And I think the credit goes completely to him.
How and why did you decide to be so honest about your life? And it all starts somewhere in a house called the Ramayana. Please tell us about it.
Thank you, Deepa. To begin with, I must salute the rulers of Abu Dhabi, UAE, and the civil society, and of course, our friends who are sitting here in limited numbers. But let me tell you, I don't get disheartened by the numbers. To me, I firmly believe that it doesn't matter how many people you impress. What matters is whom do you impress. They are more important. And so I'm quite glad, overwhelmed to be over here. Despite some hiccups and roadblocks because of some confusion or lack of coordination, but I don't blame anyone. Nonetheless, we are sitting over here for a good cause, great cause, and the most talked about cause, the book, Anything But Khamosh, which you all have presented. Margot has prepared it, and very brilliant writer, genius in her own sense, our family friend, Bharti Pradhan has done it, prepared it, presented it. You asked me a question, Deepa, that how come we could come out with such an honest, I would say not only honest, but transparent book. And so there was no reason, because Bharti was the one who convinced me. I was not going for it. But when she convinced me, she said, your story has been full of turns and twists, ups and downs, achievements, success, struggle, passion, drama, and that too without having anybody from your family in film line as well as in politics. So you can be called, besides Allah Ta'ala ka fazal, Vaheguru ka ashirwad, Prabhu ki kripa, it can be called a self-made man. And not only that, it was her desire, and I agreed to it, that it should be an inspiring book. It should motivate the younger generation, the new people. Through this book, we can tell them that if Shatrughan Sinha can make it, anybody can make it if he has the confidence, commitment, determination, passion, then certainly he can bring the comfort level. And this is what happened. Then we decided, when we bring out the book, not only the black and white, but the gray side also must exist. Without gray side, you can't make it an honest and transparent book. So we did it. It needed a lot of courage. But since I'm famous or infamous for my confidence and courage, so I took and she was the one who provoked me, who instigated me, who inspired me in the beginning. So we went ahead, and I'm very glad that wherever the book has gone, in fact, thanks to you people, and Deepa, you and Margot, that perhaps this is the only book which has gone to maximum number of lit festivals so far. Right from Kolkata Lit Fest to Jaipur Lit Fest to Pune Lit Fest to Times of India Lit Fest to Sharjah Lit Fest to London Lit Fest to Abuظبي Lit Fest to many, many more to come. So I'm very glad. And another point I would like to mention, that this book has become quite popular, very popular, thanks to Bharti, thanks to you all, that younger generation, not only adults, but even children, 13, 14, 15 age, they have come to, queued up at my house, asked for an autograph, they have brought their parents, they have been talking about this book, because this book is very inspiring and motivating. It is, for many of them, it's a learning experience. So I have my, with an attitude of gratitude, I'm very thankful and very grateful to Deepa, Mago, Bharti Pradhan, and all the people who have contributed in this book. Thank you.
You are the biggest contributor, actually. We were just queuing up in the wings to get the story out. And as balanced as you have been, Bharti herself is known to be so balanced in her approach. She can call up at 3 o'clock in the night and say, I don't agree with you. And I have to say, all right. And then she calls up in the morning and says, okay, I agree with certain things that you're saying. So I think we had a very good combination over there. You're a very unusual combination of the actor and the politician. And you come from a family of academics. So how did you land up with 4 scars on your face on your way to FTII to become the most unlikely and maverick hero of Bollywood and arguably one of the most celebrated actors?
Thank you for being so kind to me, Deepa. But the fact remains, just now I answered you in the previous question that my biggest asset so far has been my confidence. And this cutty-putty shakal of mine, this is face full of scars, many people thought I wouldn't be able to make it. But, and so many people suggested that to go for the plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery. I almost agreed. But then a late and great Mr. Devanand, the superstar, he suggested me that don't go for it. And he gave his own example. He said, Dekho, mera daant ke beech mein gadda hai. Many people told me to get it filled. But I didn't, because kaam chalega to naam chalega. Once you become very popular through your work, everything will be accepted. And that's what happened. Devanand, in case of late and great Devanand, everything was accepted. It became Deva style. In my case, it got accepted once I was accepted by the people and the masses in general, and intelligentsia and media in particular. So I always believed, and I told the people that accept me as I am, good, bad, or ugly. And they had to accept me. But this was through my passion, through my confidence, and through my commitment to cinema, and also my determination to go ahead and make it. So somehow, of course, my family, as you said, all accommodations. My father, late and great father, was he did his BSc and MSc in America that time, USA. All my brothers, they're all well-read. The eldest one is space scientist in America. Dr. Ram, Dr. Lakhan was an aviation scientist in America. He came back now after many years. My third brother, Dr. Bharat. We have 4 brothers, Ram, Lakhan, and Bharat. He is a doctor, doing very good, very well in London. Since I was not very good at studies, or my aptitude was not there for science or medicine, they wanted to make me a doctor, my parents. But I was not fit enough to become a compounder even. But that's a different story that one day I became the health minister of India. Yes. That's a different thing altogether. So all those people, while sending me to FTII, they decided if something garbada goes, then they will take care of me. Fortunately, I went into the right direction. I struggled after FTII, continued, and then rest is the history which you all know. But from there, what you mentioned, talked about politics. I went to politics selflessly, not to gain anything. I was very inspired by a great leader, Jayaprakash Narayan, and I decided that this is the high time and right.
كنز الشباب الذي بددته تيها فوق الدروب بلا وعي ولا أثر مشردا أحمل الأحزان أعتلها أسعى إلى قدري ومصيبتي قدري.
Дякую. Thank you very much. And now Imadedin Raev is working on translation of a poetry book by Agatangel Krimsky called Palm Branches. Also is written in Middle East. And now we will try to read one poem from this book, also in Ukrainian and Arabic. Пальмове гілля. Це збірка. Горді пальми, думні лаври, манячливий кипарис, океан тропічних квітів, ще й цвіте цитринний ліс. Я хитнувся, бо наче впився із аромату тих квіток, аж погляну коло пальми простий житній колосок. Гей, земляче, шепче колос, похилившись на стебло. Ми чужі для цього раю. Що ж сюди нас принесло? Це точно про Ліван. Прошу.
Thank you, Marina. We are talking another time about Agatangel Krimsky, who had a love story in Beirut with one Ukrainian girl called Marina Kaminskaya. But unfortunately, this girl left Beirut, and so he wrote some poetries in my city about his pain after she left to Ukraine that time. And this collection called Palmove Helia. And I started to translate some poetries of this collection in prose. تتعانق النخلات والسروات والغار مختال يغازلهن والزهر في سحر الربيع صلاة متشامخات للسما برؤوسهن وأنا أميل بنشوتي ثملا حولي شجيرات من النارنج في الغابة السحرية وتحين مني التفاتة فأرى هنالك سنبلة قد ظللتها نخلة بحنان همست فدوى صوتها في مهجتي يا ابن بلدي غريبان نحن في هذا الفردوس ما الذي أتى بنا إلى هنا؟
Dear friends, I'm happy to say that today our presentation visited by Lana Halabi. She is the owner of Vintage Bookshop in Beirut. And why I mention her name? Because it is also the sign of our Ukrainian, Arabic, Ukrainian-Lebanese cooperation in the sphere of book publishing, book presenting, book promotion. And she makes a great job. She's very creative, and what she has done with her bookshop, with her cultural and book projects, so it's unbelievable. And I would like to mention that I'm as a writer, I promised you not to say today that I am a writer, but as a writer, I wrote a book about two Ukrainian ladies married to Lebanese. And my book called Ajnabiya in Red Car. Ajnabi in Red Car. And novel starts in the region where Lana Halabi lives and where is a book store. And also here I mentioned her name, even here. Okay, so I hope I will present you. And everybody who is українки, які живуть за кордоном, вони всі можуть називатися ажнабіями. Тож я вас закликаю, ажнабії, українські ажнабії всіх країн, єднайтеся. От. Зараз хочу закінчити цю презентацію, бо наш час добігає кінця. Unfortunately, our time will be over in a few minutes, and we have these few minutes to put questions firstly to Imadedin Raev, and maybe secondly to me, if you have such questions. No questions. Okay. And thank you very much for coming, for joining us, our team of publishers and promoters of Ukrainian culture and promoters of cooperation between Ukraine and Arabic countries. And we invite you to our stand number 11D29. You have the opportunity to see the best books published in Ukraine in different spheres, kids' books, then belletristics, fiction, non-fiction, photo and art albums. And let me see the last words of my things to express my gratitude to Abu Dhabi International Book Fair, to the Association of Arab Publishers, to the Ukrainian Association of Publishers and Booksellers, to Ukrainian community in United Arab Emirates, to Imadedin Raev, and to all to you, to everybody who attended our modest but very important historical, I think, event. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you next year at Abu Dhabi Book Fair to present you new Ukrainian Arabic projects. Thank you.
شكرا.
Dear friends, you have the opportunity now to get the autograph or the book to be signed by Imadedin Raev now here or at the stand of Association of Ukrainian Publishers and Booksellers. Thank you so much. Stand number 11D29.